Hello everybody, welcome back to another Laravel video. This time we're going to talk about what is new in Laravel 11, so let's dig right in. The first thing that I want to start off with is Laravel 11 had a lot of what I would call adjustments. So for example, how you would maybe declare your middleware is now different in Laravel 11. All of the features that I'll be talking about today are also described in detail on Laravel's documentation. So if you're looking for more detail, definitely check out their documentation as they do a really good job describing everything. Laravel made some pretty big changes in an attempt to streamline the way you configure the application and the amount of files that are included in a default Laravel project. So if you look at your app.php, which is in bootstrap/app.php, now by default, this is what's included. We can configure our routing, our middleware, exceptions, etc. So this is where you would declare your middleware from now on. And if you wanted to do middleware for web, you would go like this, and then you would start doing your middleware. There is a lot that has been changed here, and this is one of those things where I'd recommend looking at Laravel's documentation and really getting kind of accustomed to this new way of doing things, because I think largely it's the same, but you're doing and you're configuring these things, slightly different. So definitely give the docs a look. This kind of helped eliminate a lot of the need for some of the included service providers, and as a result, the event discovery, automatic discovery, is now turned on by default, so you don't have to enable or register your listeners and events. That's just on by default now. So all of your applications, exception handling, and configuration would be done in here. And so what we can say is exceptions. And if we don't want to report something, previously we could do that before, but if we don't want to report something, then we can just say, don't report model not found exception, for example. And it's going to work the same way as it did before. It's not going to report this as an exception. The base controller class that comes with Laravel 11 is now abstract, doesn't extend anything, and has no traits that are being used on it. So this is a little bit of a shift in what was there before. The default database connection for Laravel 11 is now SQLite. So this means this is a change previously, because previously the default was for MySQL, and now the default is for SQLite. So you should be able to get up and get going a lot sooner without having to remember. If you were anything like me, every time I would start a new project, I would forget what my local password was or my username was, and so I would have to go and look at a different project, copy that. So by default now, it's going to be SQLite. It'll work out of the box, which is pretty convenient for getting started. Another new thing in the Laravel ecosystem is a package called Reverb. And Reverb is a WebSocket server. It's a first-party package put up by the Laravel team. And so basically what we can do is we can call PHP Artisan Reverb start. And it's going to start that WebSocket server. You have to install it and do that, but it's as simple as to start the actual server. It's that easy. It's just like starting your queue worker. If you're looking for more information about that, definitely check out the Reverb package, because there's a lot that goes into it, and this is really truly an awesome package put out by the Laravel team. Inside of routes/console.php, you will be presented a file that looks like this, and in here we can use the new schedule facade. So we can do schedule and command, and we can say, this is the command that we want to run. And so for this, for example, we're going to use the example that Laravel gives, and that is emails send, and then we can say we want to send this daily. But again, like all the Laravel stuff, you have a bunch of choices that you can do. You can do hourly, you can do specific dates and time, etc. We're just going to do daily, and this is what daily would look like. Okay, next, the feature that I want to talk about is rate limiting on a per second basis. Previously, this was only possible on a per minute basis. So it looks something like this. And again, I'm using the example from the Laravel docs. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely check out the docs. So in the app service provider, in the boot method, you can specify a rate limiter, and we're going to say we're rate limiting for invoices, and we're limiting it on a per second basis. Laravel makes it super easy to do these rate limits on pretty much anything that you would need in your application. Okay, so another new feature that Laravel has is by default, there is now an up route, which is supposed to help with health checking. So if we just run PHP artisan route list, and this is a blank Laravel project, we can see that now by default there's an up route, and that can be customized if you'd like. Look at the documentation. This is kind of cool. You know, this can be used for if you've got containers or a load balancer, etc. Or let's say you've got something checking the status of your site. You know, it would hit this route, and if this route is giving back a 200, then you're all good. If it's not, then your health checker will then tell you, hey, this application is no longer healthy. Start doing the notifications. Next up is graceful key rotation for decrypting and encrypting data. So currently Laravel uses the app key to do this, but now there is a new key called app previous keys. You define a comma separated list of your previous keys, and Laravel will in order check those keys and then stop once it finds a key. So if we've got a key that looks like this, and then we just do a comma, base 64, and let's say one of our keys was 234. So Laravel will first try this key, and if this doesn't work, then it'll go ahead and try this key. Previously, this would have been a lot more difficult, and perhaps you would have had to use an external package. You know, now for the people that are rotating their keys, you know, for good security measures, or perhaps they were hacked or something happened, you know, this gives a nice built-in way to do that. So also in the .env folder, sticking with the security kind of theme, there's a new environment variable called bcrypt rounds. And so Laravel will automatically rehash passwords if this is changed. So it looks like the default is 12. If we change this to 20, when the password is checked, it's going to rehash the password, you know, if it detects that the number of rounds, you know, are different. Next up is Laravel prompts. Laravel prompts allows you to kind of have like forms on the command line. So with that, they now allow you to do validation. So when you're using text, for example, you can specify some validation. It validates it in the same way. You can do closure and or use the rules built into Laravel. So let's take a look at that. So I have text here. We're saying it's going to be a text input field, and then what is your first name? And then we're just declaring a validate function. And likewise, we're going to ask what the last name, but this time we're not having a closure function. We're just using the built-in Laravel rules. So let's take a look at this. So, you know, it's the what is your first name? And if I just type in an A, the validation rules are running. So if I do ABC, it works. And likewise for last name, same thing, but this is the one that's using the built-in Laravel rules, and it's just that easy. This is nice because if you're building any sort of command line application where you're requiring input from users, you can now validate it. New in Laravel 11 allows you to easily test when you interact with the queue. So for example, I've created a process invoice job, and in this job, we can release this with a delay of 10 seconds. So this is now easily testable. This process job doesn't do anything else. So if we look at what the test would look like now, we say there's a job, process invoice, and this is the key detail right here. With fake queue interactions, we still call handle like we normally would, but this time we can say assert released, and in this released we can say there was a delay of 10 seconds, and it's going to assert that that happened. And we can prove that this works if I run the test, and we can see that the test passes. So there are other available functions. There are deleted and failed. These are really nice to have, you know, when we're writing our tests, because this just makes our life so much easier for testing. Laravel has some new artisan commands for generating files. There are 4 new ones: class, enum, interface, and trait. And this is just an easy way to basically have a stub for each one of these. So you can call PHP artisan make class, and then it'll make the class. So let's do that one as an example. So we just type in PHP artisan make and then whatever it is that we want to make. So let's just say invoice generator. It's just going to go ahead and create that. So if you want to specify the folder that it should go in, you can just specify the folder beforehand. So we can just do invoice generator. It's a blank class. There are ways that Laravel allows you to set what the default stub looks like. So if your team or your project has a specific way of having a new class, the styling, etc., you can generate the stub and then use that. New in Laravel 11 are casts as a function. So you can now declare your casts as a function. This is actually how it comes by default in Laravel now. So it's the same way. You return an array with a key value pair, and the key is your database field, and then the value is whatever you want to cast it as. So this allows for some interesting things, because previously, since it was a property, there were limitations because you were limited to what you could do within a property. But now, since it's in a function, you can do literally whatever you want because it's inside of a function. So your limitations are the limitations of whatever you can do inside the function. So you can call other functions and do other cool things of that nature. One interesting new feature that was brought to Laravel 11 is the once helper function. And this is quite interesting, because basically once this function is ran, it's going to cache the result. And so anytime you call it afterwards, it's just going to return that cached result. So in this example here, we have a function called random, and it's using the once function. And in our command here, with a signature of once, we're calling that function 3 times. The first time, it'll generate the random integer, and the second 2 times, it's going to return that cached result. So let's take a look. And we can see that it provides the same number 3 times. I could see some interesting use cases for this where you only need to do something once and then you've got the cached result. So it's kind of cool. One thing that to note is that you should definitely check the docs on this, because there are some intricacies with this if you're using this in an object context. The last new feature I want to talk about is these new functions that were added to get tables, views, etc., to kind of introspect the database and tables, etc. So we've got a function called get tables, and if we run this, it's just going to get all the tables that exist in our database. Likewise, if we call get views, there aren't any views by default in Laravel, so that's why we don't see any. If we wanted to get the columns on a specific table, this is nice, then we can easily do this. This previously wasn't as easy. You could do it, but it previously just wasn't as convenient. If we want to get the indexes, we can do the same thing. We can see that there's only a primary index and a user's email unique index. And lastly, if we want to get all the foreign keys on the users table, we can do it that way. But by default, Laravel doesn't have that, so that's why it's not showing anything. Well, that's it. That's all the new features for Laravel 11. I hope you found the video useful. Like I said before, if you're interested in learning more about the release, definitely check out their docs. Laravel does a wonderful job working on their docs to make it easy to read and easy to follow. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps my channel immensely. And I look forward to putting out new videos for you.